Hello everybody, thank you all for joining. So I am very pleased to welcome today Benoit from Grooster, who is going to run a 45-minute presentation about growth hacking and lead generation. And then you'll have 15 minutes to ask all the questions you want. So Benoit, feel free to go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Alexandra, for the introduction, and thank you for having me. Thank you for Sigfox. Welcome, guys. Today we'll be talking about growth marketing, as Alexandra told us, and we'll be going through our favorite and easiest hacks that will pretty much like get you going with your first growth marketing efforts. But first, let me talk you a bit about ourselves. We are called Groupster. We are a Paris and tools-based lead generation agency, and we especially perform in outbound marketing, which is we go talk directly to our clients' prospects, and we work with three different models. The first is leads as you go. So we do execute lead generation strategies for our clients. The second one is a bootcamp, which takes place every month here in Paris. And the third one is one-on-one consultancy by the hour, which has us go through in-depth strategies with our clients from all around the world. About me, who am I? My name is Benoit. I'm the co-founder with Anthony, whom you will find on LinkedIn. My expertises range from copywriting, content, marketing, and LinkedIn outreach. And I'm the trainer-in-chief as well. So today we'll be going through all this, and we'll be sure to free up some time at the end to cover any question that you have, should you have any. But first, let me give you a bit of a track record, so you have some background about what the strategies that we'll be sharing with you today are able to provide for you. So, for example, we've been able to generate more than 150 key account leads with some of the biggest B2C influence marketing brands for a influence marketing SaaS that was in 10 weeks. We were able to generate 774 leads in 12 weeks as well for some high-ticket hardware car retailer product, and 80 leads in 2 weeks for a high-tech hardware sports performance monitoring product. So this one was pretty intense, to be honest, and our client wasn't able to cope with all the leads that we sent his way. And for ourselves, we do work with pretty low volumes with our strategies and outbound, and we are able to generate about 20 quality leads every week with some of the hacks that I will be giving you today. And so today we'll be going with 4 main topics. The first one will be some background and forward about what is marketing, what is growth marketing, and what is, in our opinion, the best marketing strategy. Would you be B2B, B2C, or whatever? Then we'll be going through growth marketing or growth hacking theory, whatever you call it. Thirdly, we'll be going through 5 hacks that will help you skyrocket your lead generation, and we'll be freeing up some time for some wrap-up and questions in the end. So let's get going. But first, let me tell you a little bit of story. We had a client a while ago, which was a pretty successful startup because their product was good, but they had spent a lot of time, resources, and money on framing and designing the perfect lead generation and outbound process. So they would plug everything together. They would spend countless hours with developers and growth hackers designing like the perfect framework and methodology, and the results were close to known. and it was pretty much miserable. They were tolling at a 10% open rate, which is pretty miserable. And I think, in our opinion, that they had mistaken what growth marketing and growth hacking are really about, and that's what we're going to talk to you about today. Um, but before we go in depth with growth marketing, you need to understand what is marketing and what is, in our opinion, the best marketing strategy. And so, just to give you an idea, here is a quick comparison between two of the most trending products you can potentially hear about, which is McDonald's Big Mac and Tesla's car. I didn't know. I don't remember the exact car model, but just to give you an idea, here is a comparison between their respective ad budget, which is more than 500 millions per year, and Tesla has a miserable and measly $6 per car, which is voiture. Sorry for the typo, but which is insanely, which is just insane. And the idea is that, as Elon Musk puts it, the key with regards marketing and any product really is to just have a product that people love. And once you grasp it, and once you're able to release a product that people love, you've pretty much done 80% of the business and 80% of the work. And anything that you will be plugging, and any kind of strategy and any kind of work that you will be putting to market your product will be insanely much easier and insanely much performative. So that sounds like common sense, and you will see that growth marketing is pretty much common sense. But when you look at many startups and many companies, you will happen to see that many entrepreneurs actually tend to miss that point, and don't and slack somehow on the quality of the product, and hope that anything like Facebook ads or growth marketing will be able to help them keep up with the pace, which is a huge mistake. So spend time with your product first. And the idea is that you need to track your product's quality, and you have three main ways to control it and monitor it. The first is value proposition. And the idea is that you need to track pretty much every week or every month, how is your product able to solve your client's problems, and what is that problem, and does it perform well at helping them solve it. The second is execution. You need to put special efforts in your user experience and user interface and their core features. You need to be able to select the ones that are useful, and not try and put out as many features as possible. Just test them out, and only keep up with those that are really helpful. And the third one is psychological alignment, and that is being aligned and being able to resonate with your with your customers' values, biases, and general principles. So your product's quality comes down to those 3 points, and you need to be really, as CEOs, I don't know who you are and what is your position within the company, but as CEOs especially, you need to be paying particular attention to the 3 points. So let's head on to growth marketing theory. Now that you have some background about what marketing really is, the idea is that growth marketing can be defined in three main points. You will be able to find a whole lot of books and resources that will have you go in depth with growth marketing. Shanilis's book, which you will find easily on Amazon, is pretty good and goes pretty in depth with all those concepts. But I will be going through all the main tenets of the concept and practices. So the first main idea that you need to keep in mind is that growth marketing pretty much comes down to a process. And this process is about performing as many experiments as possible with high pace and pretty much drive your company with hypotheses. So it's pretty scientific. It's a pretty scientifical approach, and basically it goes in loop. And so you first start with a hypothesis. So let's say that if I A/B test some particular line on a website, I will be designing the hypothesis that this new line will be able to help me perform better with my conversion rate. That's a hypothesis. And then I will need to test it, which is design a workable framework that will help me experiment upon this hypothesis. So I will be putting in place a time framework and a space framework, which is your website, to test upon the idea that you came up with. Then you will need to analyze the results. So once your experiment has come to an end and you have the results, then you need to be able to figure out whether this was a good or bad experiment and whether the hypothesis was actually congruent. So what you will need to do is track the right KPIs that will help you do that. And you will need to leave all your biases on the table, because you need, and it's crucial, you need to be able to assess whether the experiment was a success or a fail. And this is pretty much a question of life or death for your growth marketing strategy. And then you just iterate, you rinse and repeat, and you will see once you start to perform growth marketing that pretty much every analysis and every experiment gives birth to other hypotheses. So now we've seen that it's a process. So now let's talk about synergies. You'll see that if you end up hiring a growth marketer, there is one thing that you will need to expect from him is some kind of structural mutation. And a good growth marketer is somebody that is able to align the three main tenets and three main areas of a company, which are sales, marketing, and product. So usually what you will hear about and the usual idea that people have with regards these three parts are that they just don't work together. Like the product people just don't talk to the sales people, and the sales people and marketing people are pretty much contenders and try and carve in as many business as possible to prove everybody that they're the best and that marketing is actually better than sales. So this is incredibly wrong. And the idea that the growth marketer will be able to implement the processes that will help the three parts work in synergy. So the idea is that the growth marketer, structure agenda at the venture level is to positively influence the company's organization in such a way that it progressively shifts from polarized environment, so that is product, sales, marketing being isolated on their own, in which the three departments actually work on their own with little to no communication, to an interdependent environment where the three work hand in hand. That is And how do you track it, and how does it manifest and materialize in your work environment? So when you have the three work together, you will tend to see that sales will be able to maybe, like, that's an idea, that's an example, but you will see that sales will be able to come up with feedback that they got from some of their prospects, all the way to the product team that will be able to work upon it and actually make the product better off of the quality feedbacks that they got from the sales team. Also, you will be able to see that the product team will be able to align with the marketing needs, and maybe shape up a product that is even better and that better aligns to the marketing's research's results. So that's many synergies that we'll be able to find, and one of the growth marketing's biggest assets is this ability to synergize the three. So just to give you a more in-depth look about these kind of synergies, the product's main contribution would be to give momentum, relevance, and power with regards to say marketing and sales, which is like putting out relevant and powerful features. Marketing will be able to ignite visibility, give sales some momentum as well, and gather some quantitative feedback all the way to the product team, which will be able to work on it. And sales will be able to gather qualitative feedback to the product and marketing team. Here are some of the usual KPIs that you will find, pretty relevant and pretty powerful in helping you track whether these synergies are helpful, which is how many people, for example, churn and stop working with your product. What is the usual lifetime value of your product, and so how much money in average do your customers make you, and MQL and SQL, which are marketing qualified leads. So how many leads that marketing generate, and how many leads do sales generate. So that is all for synergies. And the third main aspect is mindset. So there is many things that we'll be able to put into that idea of mindset, but it is really important. And if I had to pick one concept that would define what a growth marketer or growth hacker is, that would be that of mindset. So here are the 5 most important kind of mindsets that you need to have when you are a growth hacker or growth marketer, which is that you need to have a growth mindset. What is a growth mindset? It is the idea that you need to be constantly looking for new ways to grow as a professional and as a person, and you need to be constantly looking to learn new things and to implement new things and to pretty much expand your comfort zone as a professional. That is pretty important because it pretty much oozes on the company's overall culture. And the growth hacker or growth marketer in a company has a pretty strong structural role, as I told you. So growth mindset is pretty important. The second one is analytical. You can put anything that you want, any kind of effort, or use whatever tools, all the tools and all the strategies in the world. If you are not able to properly analyze and assess the results that you got, you just won't be able to perform well. So you need to be pretty cautious with how you handle the data that you gather and that you generate, and so you need to be well taught about data analysis and to be pretty rigorous about it. Then you need to be relentless. So that is pretty important as well. You need to be constantly coming up with new ideas for you to taste, to test. So relentlessness is pretty important as well. Then you need to be high-paced, which is you need to be performing pretty much as many experiments as you can possibly perform. So yeah, you need to be performing experiments, a amount of experiments that you are able to cope with, operationally speaking. But you need to be putting as many quality experiments as possible. And lastly, you need to be ambitious. There is a pretty successful team here in Paris, growth team, which is that of Spendesk. I don't know if you heard about them, but they went from a one-person growth team to a 30-person growth team, if I recall right, or maybe 20. But that's a huge growth rate in less than a year, and they are incredibly ambitious. They just want to become the best and largest and most effective growth team in Paris and in France. And that's a pretty good vision, in my opinion. And and I think it illustrates pretty well what a growth mindset and what an ambitious mindset should be when you are a growth marketer. And so as you can see, a growth marketer is pretty entrepreneurial in a sense. And usually what you will see is that a growth marketer has pretty much all the qualities that are needed to be a good entrepreneur, which is pretty good, I don't think that technicality is really a prerequisite to perform well as a growth marketer, because there are so many, as we'll see, there are so many tools, there is so many strategies that you can be a good growth marketer and generate insane amounts of results without even being a technical or knowing how to code. So the idea is if you have the mindset and if you are able to structurally interfere and interfere on the company's structure and shape, you will be performing extremely well as a growth marketer. So just to give you an idea and maybe to give you an idea, here is what a growth marketer is and what he isn't. So a growth hacker is meticulous but not obsessive, which is that a growth marketer is able to gather and develop many skills on a pretty wide area of expertise, but is not necessarily an expert. You can be an expert on some particular skill, but that won't make you a good growth marketer. A good growth marketer, like being an expert in Facebook ads or Google AdWords or LinkedIn, doesn't make you a good growth hacker. What will make you a good growth hacker is the ability to use Google AdWords or Facebook ads or whatever as part of a wider strategy that will be able to skyrocket your company's growth. So what we'll do, we actually pride ourselves in Growthster for not being experts like with regards Facebook ads or whatever. What our expertise is lead generation. So we're not experts at LinkedIn, we're not experts at emailing, but we're able to use them so well and actually well enough that we're able to generate tons of leads and quality leads for our clients. So that's what you need to think about. A growth hacker doesn't have to be obsessive with regards being the best Google AdWords practitioner there is. And he just needs to be meticulous enough to perform well. Then he needs to be well organized, but not fully automated, which is today, and I think that is pretty much the biggest problem with contemporary entrepreneurship is the actual obsession with automation and scalability. As a growth marketer, you don't need to be automating everything. And what you need to do is just being well organized and be able to differentiate from between a process that actually needs to be automated in some way, or a process that needs to that needs to be done manually. An example with that is I just usually you will see people like spending countless hours working out the perfect cold email sequence when they just haven't sent any cold email as of yet. This is pretty miserable because there is just no point in looking for the perfect email sequence, like 5 or 6 email sequence, when you're just not even able to know if your very first cold email actually performs well. So the idea is usually what we would recommend is that people like wannabe growth teams or entrepreneurs, when they want to actually skyrocket their lead generation, they just start from the basics, which is sending cold emails one by one first, then progressively implement and increment new elements and new things into their process, which will progressively become more and more complex and performative as it goes. So usually you will see people like, yeah, looking for the perfect process. Just don't do that. Just be well organized. Do experiments that you're able to cope with, and always look for the perfect. Always look for sending the lowest volume there is. Then a growth marketer is pragmatic but not counterintuitive, which is, as I told you, when you're a growth marketer, you need to be to have a scientific approach, which is like being able to design a hypothesis and then test upon it and see and then analyze the results. That doesn't mean that you need to just switch off your brain and not listen to your instinct when you have one. I think instincts in business and entrepreneurship is actually pretty important. So you need to find the right balance between being pragmatic and being actually intuitive and being able to listen to your instinct. So if, for example, you come up with a copywriting on your website that doesn't really align with copywriting best practices, but you actually feel within yourself that is the right idea, by all means test it. Then lastly, a growth marketer is ambitious and passionate, but not a hothead. A beginner growth marketer is somebody that will be sending out several hundreds of emails on the first day of work, which is a pretty bad idea. Building growth takes time. It doesn't take place in 1 month. And so you need to be pretty cautious and do things the right way. So be passionate with what you do, but first, by all means, learn to walk before you run, by all means. Another pretty important idea with growth marketing is that of the framework R, which is which can be considered in 2 ways. So first, you can see it as your customer's life cycle, but also as your company's route to growth. So the first step is awareness. That you will see that you will see that your customer will be coming up here and go down the road all the way to here. So how does it start? Well, first it starts with awareness, which is being seen by your market. So how do you get seen by your market? Well, first you will need to have a good reputation. You need to maybe do some PRs, public relations. You will need to maybe do some content, to do some course posting. So that is all the best practices and all the practices that will help you be seen by your market. Then when your customer and market has seen you and was actually able to even know that you exist, comes the point of the time to acquire your customer. So that is dependently on your business model, being able to be used by your customer. So what you do to reach up to this point is several things. First, you need to provide enough value and let your potential customer know that you have some value for him, which is being able to solve a problem for him. And secondly, you need to have a proper onboarding process, which will have him on board onto your product without any kind of blocking friction. Then comes the point of activation, which is having your customer purchase your product and give you money for it. What activation is pretty much a sales work. So you have the sales pretty much closing the deal. Then comes the point of retention, where the idea is to have your customer stay with you as long as possible. And the longer he stays, the more referrals he will give you, and the more money he will make you. Then the revenue pretty much comes down to your business model. So that is, how do you monetize your collaboration with your customer? And lastly, the referral, which is having your customer bring friends along. So the idea of referral is pretty important, and usually companies slack on this part. So let me just stop right here for a bit with you. Referral is key to your growth, because if you are able to multiply your, if you are able to, like, say, ask your customer simply for a referral, so say just leave him a phone call and ask him if he has somebody to refer to you, then you will see how powerful it gets. And usually people like entrepreneurs and companies slack on this because they are afraid to ask. Just ask, pick your phone, drop a simple phone call to your customers and see how everything is going, see if they are happy with the solution, solve any kind of problem that they will get with it, and then just don't be afraid to ask, and you will see how far you can go with just asking some referrals, and you will see what the quality leads you can get from it. So this is the six aspects of the framework R. And the idea is that there are key KPIs that will help you track all this. So awareness is engagement, web traffic, search data, and click-through rate. So these metrics are all the things and all the figures that will help you assess whether you are actually seen by your market. Then acquisition is something that you need to track monthly usually, which is how much your customer base grew. Then activation will be about conversion rates, average baskets. So that is how much money in average do your customers spend with you, and monthly and annually recurring revenue. Then retention will be about lifetime value, and the idea is to have it as high as possible, and churn rate, which is how many customers stop using your product. Then revenue, which will be measured through upselling and cross-selling rates. And lastly, referral will be a virality index. And virality index is pretty easy to calculate, which is you need to have it as close to 1 as possible One being that, meaning that one customer brings you one more, brings in one customer with him. So every time you acquire one customer through your acquisition channels, you have one more customer coming along with him, which pretty much divides your acquisition costs by two, which is insanely important. And you see how important referral is. So you have three main ways to perform as a growth marketer and three weapons, which is creative marketing, which is usually what we hear when we talk about growth marketer. We have the idea of that kind of mad scientist that is able to come up with the best and most brilliant ideas. But in reality, that's not really the case. The idea is that what we hear when we what you're being talked about when you're told about maybe Hotmail hacks or like the usual like romantic anecdotes that you hear and stories that you hear about growth marketing is not a genius thing. It's what we call a golden nugget. And a golden nugget is the results of tons and tons of experiments that were actually performed well. And the law of numbers had people eventually find the right practice for their company context. So when you're told about Hotmail's PS, I love you, which are at the end of their emails, which had their growth skyrocket. It was not a brilliant idea per se. It was just the results of tons and tons of experiments that actually ended up with them finding this one hack. The third one is automation and engineering, and I think it pretty much comes down to at the third place in terms of priority, which is progressively being able to automate your process to just gain time and just free up more time for new experiments. So that is what you need, the arsenal of weapons that you need to perform well as a growth marketer. So that's pretty much it for the theory. Now let's head on to the practice. So what I will be giving you now for the 10 to 15 minutes that we have left is 5 hacks that will help you get going with your lead generation, which is B2B. Alexandra told me that you're all in B2B, so that will apply to all of you. So the first one is a framework that we design that will help you high-paced test your copies. So as I told you, high pace is pretty important with regards to growth marketing and lead generation as well. And the idea is to basically design write 3 to 6 radically different copies. Should it be a cold email or a copywriting for a landing page or whatever? So design 3 to 6 radically different copies, then A/B test them at equal volumes and campaign length, which is, for example, if I decide to launch a cold email campaign, I will just write down maybe 4 different templates, email templates, with all due personalization, and I will send each and every template to 100 people. So each segment will receive 1 different template. Then I will need to track the relevant KPIs, which will be, for example, with cold email, click-through rate. So how many people do click a link that I would include in the template? How many people open it? How many people reply to it? How many people ask me to not send them any more emails and such KPIs? And then at the end, you choose the best performing copy, which will be able to scale your lead generation efforts from. The idea, for example, with cold emailing is that you need to find the template that has you has you a 20% no, not 20, 20% reply rate and 80% open rate. So that is the benchmark that you need to be looking for. If you're not able to, if you don't come up with a template and copy that has that gets you this kind of metrics, you need to keep experimenting and keep testing. Don't be content with a 50 or 40% open rate, because you're leaving some serious reasons on the table. So this strategy works with cold emailing, Facebook or Instagram ads or whatever. The idea is that you need to A/B test to equal volumes and to A/B test radically different increments. So that is for the hack number one. The hack number two is a pretty simple hack, but which had us maybe helps us generate maybe 30 free leads every week, which is create a value packed piece of content. So that would be a ebook, for example, or a article, or an infographics or whatever. It can also be a video, because you are able to host a video on Google Drive and just store it on your Google Drive. The idea is to let people who have the link to you or to your content be able to see it. So you need to not restrict the access to your content, and just promote it on your channel acquisition channels. So maybe like what we do usually with Groover is we just promote it on LinkedIn. So we send it to our first connection, post it on our profiles, and the idea is to generate as much traffic as possible and give the link as much as possible to people. What we would usually do is design a bit link. So let me design a bit.ly, and the idea with bit.ly is that it has you able to modify the copy and modify the link per se. So you are able to add a little line that will help you convert more. For example, you can say like, for example, with this one is advices, LeadGen, so people know what they're getting when they're clicking. So Bitly is pretty interesting, and one little interesting hack is that when you add a plus at the end of the URL, you are able to track the analytics from the lead and see how many people did click the link. Okay, so this is pretty interesting, and I recommend to use it on LinkedIn especially, but not on email, because the Google and servers just hate shorten URL. So by all means, just don't use it when you decide to promote a content through cold emailing. And then once you have it all promoted, what you need to do is just let people click through it. And as I told you earlier, that was a mistake. What you need to do is have the content restricted, so that people are not able to directly access to it, and need to ask for the permission. And what it will do is that when you map Google Drive directly to your Slack or your email address, you will receive free leads directly into your Slack, with people asking for access to your piece of content, which is pretty amazing, because you're able to get their direct and verified email addresses that they are actually active on, and then follow up at will, and just do business with them and activate them. Be cautious though to not over nurture them and not contact them too often, because they're not as engaged as you would tend to think they are. So you can end up having a little friction if you send them emails and updates too often. So just just send them an email with quality information every once in a while. So every once in a while, so that would be maybe once every month. That sounds like a good idea. Then the third hack is a pretty interesting one, which we use on a daily basis, which is that when you use Google Rights, you're able to pretty much find anyone's email and phone number. And to do that, you need to use what we call dorkings. What are dorkings? It is some requests, some Boolean requests that have you source through Google's data and content. So, for example, if I need to, if I'm looking to source through PDFs that are hosted on Google, I will be able to use it by typing file type $PDF and then the domain name with the little thing is, and I don't remember the name right. And what we'll do is that it will help you find the right, find the address, and by adding this, you will be able to source through email addresses that relate to the domain name. So, for example, if I head onto Google and I type file type .pdf and I type brewster.co, we'll see what it gets us. It doesn't get us anything, but if I just type in brewster.co right here, I would just find my own email address. So you can experiment with it, and you will see how many quality emails and how many quality data you are able to find with it. Another pretty interesting one is this one, which has your source through any job title on LinkedIn and find their direct addresses. So you need to that can work with Gmail or whatever, but this one is pretty interesting. So, for example, if I want to source through maybe personal trainers, I will find a whole lot of Gmail addresses which I'm able to scrap using an extractor. So if you're a mass market product, that can go a long way with helping you skyrocket your growth. So you can do the same one with a phone number. So this one works pretty well as well. And the last one is just plain email address, which has you find or verified if a email address actually exists. Another interesting tool that we use is mailtester.ninja, which is a free email verifier, and so it can help you verify batches of up to 100 email addresses at once, and it's completely free. And the results that we get from it are pretty satisfying. So just do give it a go. The fourth one is use, as I told you, URL shorteners. This is pretty interesting, and you got a pretty wide offer, which are able to which can help you leverage a different kind of action from your clients. So the first one is pixel.me, which has you retarget your clickers through Facebook's Pixel. So when a person, when a prospect clicks on your link, you will be able to retarget them on Facebook and display them ads of your company. Bitly, as I told you, is pretty interesting as well. And the last one is Exitbar or Limber, which is my personal favorite. And what it helps you do is include your own pop-up onto another website, so which doesn't belong to you. So you are able to have a pop-up pop anywhere on the web, and it's pretty interesting with your social selling strategy, because when you share a article that you didn't write, you will be able to retarget the traffic that you generate on the particular piece of content to your own website or product. So Experiment with exit bar. Limber is works well as well, but it's pretty expensive. But exit bar is pretty interesting, and it's not really expensive, and it's really interesting. It will take you a bit of time before you come up with well-designed and good-looking pop-ups, but it's pretty good. Just don't include it in your emails, as I told you, because it will hurt your deliverability drastically, and you will end up in spam, which will be foolish. And lastly, and that is maybe the biggest hack that I can give you. Again, it's pretty common sense, but a lot of people slack on it, and it's just spend time chatting with your customer one-to-one. So if you can be pretty regular with it, and each and every week spend some time meeting up or phoning your customers or prospects to actually understand them as better that you actually understand yourself. This is pretty important, and it will help you go a long way. People usually don't go out of the building and they think that they get everything about their market by just looking at their analytics, and that is pretty wrong. Just spend maybe 2 hours per week chatting with your customers, and you will see how far it gets you. You just can't scale and automate everything, and at one point you just need to spend time with the people that make you a living. And finally, the bonus hack is just don't look for hacks. Hacks come and go, but method and mindset do stay for good. Spend a whole lot of time investing in growing your growth mindset and becoming and having the perfect methodology. Just focus on best practices and first principles, which are, as I told you, for example, the anecdote and what we think about what the best marketing strategy is. So at the beginning of the webinar, that is an example of a first principle. You won't get successful in growth marketing by knowing each and every Chrome plugin there is on the market, but you will be a successful growth hacker if you understand the basic principles, if you do understand your behavioral psychology, for example, if you understand how business and how the human mind works. So spend a whole lot of time studying all these topics, and don't just focus on the fads and the trends. Execute at a fast pace. And keep religious track of all your knowledge. This is pretty important. If you're starting to grow as a company, there is a pretty interesting tool that is called Slides, which will help you gather all the data and all the knowledge into one pretty workable space. So do experiment with it. This is pretty good. It was done by some company from French founders, and it's really good. The UX is amazing. Lastly, best performing growth team just don't steal hacks. They just focus on all the above and just focus on their own thing. So that will be pretty much it for today. So to give you a quick wrap up before we head on to the questions, what is growth marketing? Basically, it's process plus synergies plus mindsets. Spend time studying the framework R, and to finding the right KPIs for your company. And lastly, what I shared with you is 5 hacks, which is high-pace test your copies. That you can use Google Drive to generate quality leads. You can find data with Google using Dorks. You can use URL shorteners to improve your reach, and you can high-pace test your copies. No, sorry, that is a typo again. It is to spend time with your customers to understand them as well as you understand yourself. So thank you for your time, and now I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benoit, for this presentation and all the tips you gave. So it's time for the Q&A session now. So if you have any question, feel free to write it on the a question box on the right of your screen, and we would be happy to help.
It was pretty packed with information, so if you need to be coming back on any topics, just let me know. Alexander, is there a chat I can see messages on, or?
Yes, there is a chat and a question box. So for
Okay.
now, only as a remark about a great calculation about Tesla and McDonald's errors.
Yeah.
To conclude that actually McDonald's has a higher error than Tesla.
Yeah, very true. But the idea was just to give you a comparison about what kind of efforts and resources you need when your product is good and really good versus when the product isn't really good, as was the case with Big Mac, and you need to put tons of efforts and money to promote it. So yeah, McDonald's is actually pretty profitable, and even more than Tesla. There's no doubt about it. But my point was just to put the two different products in contrast to tell you how much a good product can take you. That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, thank you very much, Benoit. We have also another question about if we are going to send the link for the PDF or the ACFly. So yes, of course, we will send it to you after this webinar by email, and you'll be able also to see again this webinar on YouTube.
Yeah. So I will let Alexandra get the PDF, and we'll be sure to be sharing with you.
Thank you, Paige. Is there another question? Okay. I think it has been pretty clear. So thank you, Benoit. And we will send you a follow-up email. So if you have any question for Benoit or the Sigfox team, feel free to ask. We would be very happy to answer to it.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, for having me. So if you, should you have any question, be sure to follow up with Alexandra, or you can contact us at hello@groupster.com. You can find us on groupster.co, which is our bootcamp's website, and .com, which is our agency website. You can chat with us and book a meeting with us where we can address any question that you will have at groupster.com/consultation. And you can find our resources on groupster.com, #resources. And we have a English written ebook, which will give you 50 best practices with regards business development, marketing, and time management. So be sure to give this a look. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.